Hello. I'm here to talk to you about gemstones again. Because, it's been a while. I thought I'd touch on gemstones again. Well, not touch, no. But, talk about gemstones and how the real information about them so that maybe you can craft them better into your world. And today, instead of taking a nice big broad one like quartz, or one of the more off ones like jade, I'm going to go with a classic. This is a classic gemstone, one that you're probably aware of. I think everybody has some idea about this gemstone. Specifically, I'm talking about rubies. Now, rubies are interesting. I like rubies. Rubies are very pretty color, first off. Everybody loves red. I don't know why. But, well, not everybody loves red, but I like red. It's a very pretty gemstone. It is a corundum. Now, a corundum is a sort of aluminum oxide. And actually, in its natural state, it's clear. But the impurities in a corundum make it be a particular gemstone. For instance, if the impurities tend to make it blue, then it's a sapphire. If the impurities make it red, which is from chromium, actually, then it's a ruby. Now, corundum in itself is actually really hard. They mine corundum when it's not a gemstone quality anyway. They actually do the mining of them to make it into powder and then attach it to sandpaper, because it's really, really hard and I'll break just about anything. The Mohs on it is 9, diamond being 10, so that gives you an idea of how tough it is. Now, it is one of the more ancient gemstones. It's not one of the newer ones. There are some newer gemstones out there, and maybe next time I'll talk about one of the ones, because it kind of gives you an idea of how we deal with gemstones now as opposed to ancient times. But in ancient times, the ruby was king. In fact, it was referred to as the king of gemstones in certain circles. It's been mined for thousands of years. In fact, we're not really clear when they started mining it. But the earliest evidence of it is about 4000 BC. So, yeah, lots of time involved there. Pretty much most of recorded history, and even before recorded history, rubies were a thing. Now, they are, known for their hardness, for their bright, clear red color, and for their just natural beauty to them. They form very nice crystals. They cut well. And as a result, it ends up with being one of the more sought after gemstones. Now, I should talk about what they do with rubies. Rubies it is almost impossible to find a gemstone quality ruby out there that hasn't been treated in some manner. They do lots of different kinds of treatments on lots of different gemstones. Everything from irradiation on things like diamonds to generate those more off colors like red or black or something like that, or blue. That's done with radiation. Some things they do gas diffusion to give it a gemstone an odd coloration or something like that, a color change formation. Rubies have been treated with heating for almost as long as they've existed. Since the earliest versions that anyone's found of heating gemstones is about 2000 BC, possibly 3000 BC. So we're talking a long time. And also, out of India is where you find the earliest rubies and the earliest versions of heating. Now, what heating does is it changes the color. It changes the color from a slightly brown color to a more red. From a red to a slightly orange color. It clarifies that color. It also helps heal inclusions. Inclusions are those little malformations inside the gemstone. Sometimes it's because there's a different gemstone stuck inside it, or sometimes it's just the way the crystals grew together. And you end up with these odd little rutile sometimes, which are the sort of needle-like lines in the gemstone. You end up with little odd discolorations in the middle of it and things like that. Cracks, fractures, things like that. Heating will help with that. It won't always fix them, but it does affect them. Particularly fractures will form what is sometimes referred to as a halo around them. So that's one way that people can tell. But you don't want to get rid of all of the inclusions. In fact, since rubies can get, well, artificially generated, because it is an aluminum oxide, and somebody figured out the chemistry of that and said, alright, we can make those. It's actually relatively easy to make an artificial ruby. As a result of that, which that started in the 1900s, early 1900s is when they figured out how to do that. As a result of that, inclusions, those minor defects that you find in rubies, have actually increased the value of the rubies slightly. And the reason being is it's a sign that it's a natural ruby, because artificial rubies don't have that. So that's an interesting aspect to dig into. If you're doing a magical world and you've got characters, dealing with rubies, if they find one that's perfect, they have to know that it didn't form naturally. The natural world doesn't generate perfection like that. So they have to wonder, who made this? Instead of using chemistry, a mage could have used alchemy, or, just sort of summon the item, some magical forces to generate it. Or it's an illusion. These are things that you might want to consider when you're looking at it in a magical world sense. Now, I said before, it's a very hard stone, which means it has some enduring aspects to it. If you want a very durable gemstone for your story, diamond's the top tier, obviously, but rubies and sapphires, the corundums, are a good choice, because they are really hard. So, if you want a nice, durable gemstone, that's a good choice. Of course, ruby is also associated with blood. In fact, the perfect color of ruby is referred to as pigeon blood. It has been that way for, again, almost as long as it's been around. Blood has been associated with rubies because of that color. The similarity between the color of blood and the color of the stones, definitely there's a corollary in the lore and the history of it. So you might want to look at it for that blood aspect. If your game world or your fantasy world has blood magic, using ruby as a focus is not a stretch, really. Everybody's heard of bloodstone, but, well, not everybody's heard of bloodstone, honestly. But bloodstone is a form of jasper, and actually kind of hard to find, and doesn't actually look like blood, so you know, go with rubies. Rubies are a good choice. Beyond that, I think the things that you might find fascinating, it does occasionally form what's referred to as asterism, which is sort of a star-like pattern in the light being refracted through it. When that happens, what they'll do is they'll cut it as a cabochon. Like I talked about before, cabochon's the sort of dome-top version as opposed to the more gem-cut version. And polish it down, and you'll get a very keen picture of that sort of star-like pattern of light. It'll look like a sort of little white star was almost painted on, and it's a lovely effect. And if you can find them, they're lovely. This happens with sapphires too. It's called asterism. If you can't find a sort of mystical significance to a star-like pattern forming in a gemstone, you're not trying that hard. Just saying. Now, beyond that, they can be made, but, you know, what are you going to do? In a fantasy world, having the kind of tools necessary to make one doesn't seem like a good idea. They are one of the few gemstones listed in the Bible, several places, usually as a measure of wealth. And at certain points, people will talk about wisdom being more valuable than rubies, or that sort of kind of reference to rubies. And it's used as a measure of wealth. So, many cultures used it as as sort of a trade stone because its value was pretty solid. They were easy to identify, easy to transport, but hard to get. Now, in our world, they are found in a wide range of places. Myanmar is known for its rubies. Of course, if you're looking on the market, the ones that you're going to want are Burmese rubies because Myanmar had embargo against it. Because politics and terrible things, oppressive regimes, stuff like that. But the Burmese rubies are sort of the gold standard for rubies. The other places that you can find it, it has appeared in India, various countries in Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, various places like that. There are a few places in the United States where they can be mined. There is one country in Europe, Macedonia, where it is able to be mined, and a few other places throughout the world scattered around. But it is not as ubiquitous as, say, quartz or something like that. So, it comes from isolated places, so you might want to look at using that element in your fantasy world as well. That, it only comes from these mines, which is how you maintain value, for one thing. It's why it's more valuable than some of the other red stones that you could find that might be prettier even, but they are more common. Garnet is more common than rubies, and you can end up with some very beautiful reds out of garnet, but people prefer the rubies. It has a greater cachet, and part of that is its rarity. Another thing to bear in mind with rubies is some of the most famous rubies in history were actually spinels. Spinel is a different gemstone, it's a different chemistry to it, and it comes in a wide range of colors. But red spinel has often been confused with rubies. Some of the royal family's gemstones, some of the rubies in the royal gems of England. What was Prince Edward's ruby and a couple of others were actually large spinel. Large red spinel. So it is a stone that can often get mistaken. If your game world does place a premium on the magical elements of ruby, people trying to pass off something like garnet or spinel, red spinel, as ruby might be an interesting take on it. Or vice versa. Ruby could be the thing that doesn't have magic, but these other gemstones do, but people don't realize it because they're getting confused about which is which. Anyway, it was just something I thought of. It's been around for a long, long time. It is ubiquitous in history. It's involved in many myths. It is involved in trade. It's been one of the key elements of trade along like the Silk Road. It was very much a precious stone of choice because, sometimes money doesn't transfer that well between countries. So you would trade gemstones which aren't stamped with a particular country. It doesn't say anything about the country that the money comes from. So you might want to look at it as a money source for your game world. Those are a few basic facts that I think you might find interesting about rubies. Like I said, it is one of my favorite stones because I love that beautiful red coloring to it. I think that most people are familiar with it, which makes it easier for you to incorporate it. If you say what a ruby is, someone will have a vision in their head of what a ruby looks like. They will be able to picture that color. You don't have to go that extra mile. It's an easy one to picture. If I hold this up and say, ruby, this is meant to look like a ruby. It's the right color. So, it has its uses in that regard. Anyway, this is my episode on rubies for my Magic and Gemstones series. I'm going to throw it out there. If anybody has any suggestions for a gemstone they want to hear more about, let me know. And I will try and get some more research done. And until then, hope you liked the episode. Let me know. Let me know if you think rubies are overrated. Let me know if you've got one and where you keep it so I can come get it. I mean, nothing. I didn't say nothing. What? Okay. Anyways, feel free to tell me what you think about rubies, what uses you could think of for your game world, and let's get some discussion going. Anyway, have a good time. Stay out of trouble, especially you. You know who I'm talking to. I can see you. Yes. No, not you. The other one. Yeah. Stay out of trouble. And try not to let life get you down. And go steal the gemstone out of the idol in the temple. Catch you guys later. Bye.